All right, good day, everybody. This is Z Marcel too, and welcome to another edition of the Verbal Submission Podcast, where we discuss all things mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. Glad that you are joining us today on March 2nd, 2021. On today's broadcast, we'll go over all the news in World Wrestling Entertainment, including my recap of the Elimination Chamber and the fallout from it. New Japan Pro Wrestling just had Castle Attack, their big event over 2 days. Some major shakeups in that level. And then finally, we may touch on some AEW news. They made a major signing, and I guess he's going to wrestle, maybe do some commentary. But a legendary performer is now part of the AEW ranks, and I have a perspective on that. As always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net. You'll be able to see our previous shows in the verbal submission. You'll also see other content, such as our Sports Inquirer show, which is on all things sports. And we also have a content, we're based in Atlanta, Georgia, if you're just listening to us for the first time. And we've covered a lot of Georgia State and Georgia Tech athletics, and we have that on there. We just did a Sports Inquirer show earlier today on March 2nd, and we went over topics such as the Atlanta Hawks firing Lloyd Pierce as their head coach. We did a delve into college basketball, J.J. Watt signing with the Arizona Cardinals in the NFL. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what we do on there. So make sure that you head to the site to check all of that out. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. This is the Sports Inquirer, all one word. And every time we do a post or an update, you'll be able to see it on our site. And it goes on our social media platforms. And then finally, if you want to listen to us or watch us on your various audio providers or video providers, such as YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcast, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. You can always do a search on there as well, and go to Sports Inquirer, and you will see all of the stuff that we have on there. So that's a quick plug of everything that we have going on. We'll start with the WWE and the Elimination Chamber. I'm gonna recap that event. I know what happened 2 weeks ago, but everything we saw on there had a major tie to what we ended up seeing happen overall. I'll start with the SmackDown side of things. We saw Daniel Bryan defeat Cesaro, Jey Uso, Kevin Owens, King Corbin, and Sami Zayn for the Universal title shot. I thought the match was executed very well. It was organized, and I listened to a probably a Jim Cornette show, which I'm a big supporter of. I like listening to it. I recommend that you give him a listen. In fact, after I finish this recording, I'm gonna listen to the latest edition. I'm a few days behind, but I'm gonna give it a shot. A lot of those guys, and Daniel Bryan, Cesaro, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, who was El Generico in the previous organization, well, they're all Ring of Honor guys. And when you have a grouping of veteran, experienced guys like that, it tends to lead better towards a better type of matchup. Those guys used to being in multiple man challenges. They've Cesaro, Claudio Castagnoli, and Kevin Owens or Kevin Steen. Those guys have literally wrestled each other hundreds of times, and you saw that chemistry throughout the contest. I thought Daniel Bryan winning was a good move because it gave a little bit of a different title shot, which was really short, and we'll get to that in a moment. I thought Cesaro really stood out, and it's the same deal with Cesaro and Bobby Lashley, who is now finally the WWE Champion. He won that last night at Raw over Miz. Those are two guys. We'll go Cesaro first because we can get plenty into Bobby later on. You look at Cesaro, the man is physically, he's maybe the strongest guy on the entire roster. He has a good build, he has a good look, he speaks multiple languages, literally, and he literally is, I think, trilingual or speaks four languages fluently, from French to English to he's from Swiss, so yeah, he has all those languages. He cuts a good promo, and I said he's got the good look, yet he's never been able to make that step towards being a champion, towards being a world champion. And I can't, I mean, it's been for years now. You hear all of these people when they do their shoot interviews or they talk, and who's the strongest guy? Cesaro. Who's the most underrated wrestler? Cesaro. I thought this would have been a good chance for him to the win the title, win the Elimination Chamber match, and get a legitimate title shot against Roman Reigns. We did not have that. Daniel Bryan was able to outlast all of those guys and get that title shot, which happened immediately after the match. Roman Reigns comes down with his advocate, Paul Heyman, and they restart the match after Daniel Bryan went through that really tough competition. And Bryan got the yes lock, or whatever you want to call it, the submission hold on Roman Reigns, but he was unable to keep hold of it. He was tired and fatigued. Roman put his moves in and was able to retain the title. And then ultimately what we end up seeing is Edge come out, spear Roman Reigns, and that's going to be the title shot for WrestleMania because Edge finally made his decision. I like the Roman Reigns and Edge matchup, and we'll have plenty of time to analyze that as we get closer to WrestleMania. But I thought that was really rough for Daniel Bryan to be in that spot. As I said, Uso, you knew wasn't going to win that. Owens and we just saw Owens and Roman Reigns fight recently, so you don't want to go quickly there. Zayn would have been intriguing. I mean, he's a heel, so having two heels against each other and Roman Reigns would have been odd. Corbin is he's a seat filler at this stage. He's just a big body for them just to throw in there. So I guess if someone had to get squashed, and that's what Daniel Bryan was, he was squashed in that match. I guess it's okay for him because if Reigns it does beat Edge or Edge beats Reigns, maybe that'll be he can get an immediate title shot in the next pay per view after WrestleMania, or maybe even Fastlane. They might run it back again because we still have a pay per view before WrestleMania. Maybe Bryan gets a shot against Reigns in that, so they have a legitimate matchup. But yeah, it was just rough seeing Daniel Bryan win that event in Elimination Chamber and get squashed by Roman Reigns. But we do get Reigns against Edge for the Universal title, and I think that's a matchup that we can all look forward to. But yeah, that was my thoughts on that. Riddle defeated Bobby Lashley, and John Morrison to win the U.S. title. Lashley came in as a champion. He lost it. Riddle ended up pinning Morrison, so Lashley did not lose that match really at all, but in three-way competition, you can be a champion and still lose it without being pinned, and that's what happened. Riddle being the U.S. champion, the secondary title, maybe it gives him a little bit more credibility. Riddle's a mixed bag for me. I think, first of all, he needs to put some shoes on. That annoys me so much. Look, I know we had Von Erich and we had a Taz back in the day. He didn't wear the shoes, and we've seen some of the like Samoan wrestlers not wear shoes and things like that. I think when Rusev even started in WWE, he was shoeless. But I do not like seeing wrestlers without shoes. Not well, for two reasons. One, the injury factor. And I know these guys, maybe they had mixed martial arts background like Riddle has, where you don't wear shoes for the most part. But I still don't like seeing these guys without shoes on for injury factors. Because if a guy twists his ankle just doing some basic stuff and it's wrestling, it's not ballet. That's an old saying. And they bust their ankle up or their foot up or break a toe, that's on me if I'm the promoter. And so I don't like that at all. And then secondly, look, I know it's professional wrestling and there's a work to it and there's a lot of scripted elements to it, and you have to suspend reality in different points of it or different stages. But if I see a man without his shoes, the very first thing I'm gonna do is stomp him on his feet. And you never see a wrestler do that. And I don't hear any rules about it saying, oh, it's illegal or you can't do a foot stomp. But this is supposed to be simulated fighting. And if you're in a wrestling match and you see a guy without shoes on, you stomp on that foot immediately, and that would render him or her in a compromised position, and you would take advantage of that. The fact that you have professionals, and at least and we're talking about Riddle, he's a man, the professional male wrestlers being in the ring with them and not do that move, I don't comprehend that at all. So that's why every time I see him without his feet. Now, if you say, well, what about mixed martial arts, MMA, UFC, Bellator, whatever you want to throw in there? In those competitions, you're not allowed to foot stomp like that. Or some guys get around it and try sneaky ways to stomp the foot, but you cannot directly do a foot stomp. And now I'm saying UFC and Bellator and some major mixed martial art promotions. So you're not allowed to do that. So it's okay. So fair rules. I never hear in professional wrestling that you are not allowed to stomp on a foot. Uh, Thanks for listening for my minute and a half or 2 minute rant on that, but it just annoys me to no end. But Riddle is a very talented guy, and I think he should have a solid run with the U.S. title. And the good part is you can have natural rivalries with Morrison, the rest of the Hurt Business. I know Lashley's moved on to be the world champion or the WWE champion, so he's not going to be in the U.S. title field anymore. But there's plenty of rivals for him to do that. And then lastly, since we brought up Lashley, yeah, no, it ties into the WWE champion. Yeah, we had Drew McIntyre, who came into the Elimination Chamber as the WWE champion. He defeated AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, Kofi Kingston, Randy Orton, and Sheamus to retain the title. Thought this match was a little choppier, a little sloppier than the Elimination Chamber with the Universal Championship. I think it's just weird. I think you had guys that were. It was a real mixed bag. I think talent wise, it's a very good group, but you don't know who the face is, who the heel is. I guess you could say all of the. I guess Hardy's a face and Kofi is a face, but Randy is kind of in the. He's been in this program with Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. We don't know where he's going. AJ Styles, obviously, with Omos, is a heel with, he's cheating his way through things. Sheamus is kind of in the ambiguous level as well. I just didn't see a lot of flow in this matchup. I didn't care too much for it. But Drew won, and sure enough, Miz cashed in his money in the bank briefcase and his contract and became WWE champion. Miz is a soldier. He's been in that organization, I think, for close to 15 years now, which is amazing when you think about it. Because I remember him coming in as the real world guy and being in developmental and just kind of a lot of hate for Miz when he first came in. But he's been there a long time. He's been loyal. He's been a multi-time champion now. And if he's the bridge guy, which you ultimately saw yesterday, between Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley becoming a champion, it's not the worst thing in the world. Miz is going to take that, even though his reign lasted only about 10 days. If you look at the actual days of him being champion, I guess the ends justified the means. But it was just, I did not like seeing Miz as a champion for a week. And thankfully, they were very quick with putting the belt on Bobby Lashley and giving him the title. And the bad part about it is that I think we want to see McIntyre and Bobby Lashley get it on. I know that the ultimate one we want to see, and we've been begging for years, is the Bobby Lashley Brock Lesnar angle. And this is what I've been saying and this is what now we're going to go on my Bobby Lashley rant. The man is legit. We're going to look up how old he is. He is the best looking 40 plus. Let's see. Let me not put age on. Put him too old or too young. 44 years old. So that's off by a year. The man he looks the exact same as he did 15 years ago when he broke into WWE. I don't know what the man takes. I mean, he's very disciplined. If you follow him on Instagram, he works out a lot and he's very committed to his craft, but physically, he looks amazing. He cuts a good promo too. They don't let him talk as much. I know he has MVP with him now as kind of the mouthpiece for the Hurt Business. But I've seen Bobby in TNA and even in TNA, and even with WWE, he's cut some good promos. He can talk for himself. But physically, the man is in tremendous shape. His fighting style, it translates. It's ageless. I mean, you're not going to see him do 450 splashes and jump off the top rope too often, and all of that. He has his ground and pound. And this is where I get to the Lesnar part. For years, Lesnar was in WWE, and they're saying he's a shoot fighter, he's a wrestler, he can mix martial artists, all this other stuff. And I'm like, Bobby Lashley is comparable to it. Now Brock was an NCAA wrestling champion. We know he won the UFC heavyweight title. I'll give you all of that. But Lashley's background is tremendous. Very solid amateur wrestler when he was in the Army. He's a mixed martial artist. He's won fights in Bellator, a legitimate promotion. So he he is the one, and he's a guy that can look face to face with Brock Lesnar and look at physically imposing and be a legitimate contender for the baddest man in wrestling. And maybe this leads toward, we haven't heard from Brock in a long time. I think what they're going to try to do, we got to see Drew and Lashley at WrestleMania. Now they still got to get to Fastlane. Does Miz get another shot at Lashley? I would not be insulted by that at all. Maybe Drew gets a shot at Lashley at Fastlane, and then we get Lashley and Brock at WrestleMania. I think that has to sort itself out overall. But respect to Lashley for being a champion. And I saw this on Twitter, and I'll approach it this way. It is odd that there have only, if you look at the history of world champions in WWE, only a handful have been black. And obviously Lashley, and you look at Kofi. I consider The Rock black, and that's where people get really confused by that stuff. And no, he's Samoan and all sorts of stuff. I'm like, well, look at his father and all this stuff. But I'll just say a minority and keep it in a overall scheme of things as far as that goes. Because when you start breaking down all the where's this guy from and all this other stuff, and guys are multicultural and multiracial. I mean, it's 2021. We all, or majority of people, have a different ethnicities and different makeups. But it is good to see Bobby Lashley, a man who has been in the wrestling business for a very long time, hold the WWE Championship. Roman Reigns is the same boat as well, as far as world champions that are minorities or multicultural. And I said, I think it's good to have Lashley be a world champion for that purpose. I do have to acknowledge that because it's something important to me as a black man myself. But I don't look at race in that regard as far as who's wrestling. Also, trust me, if I did that, I wouldn't watch a lot of TV. I wouldn't listen to a lot of music I listen to, live the life I live. If it had to all be with black people, you got to expand your horizons, things like that. But it's been acknowledged by Twitter and social media, Instagram, and I've been on my different internet circles. It's been stated, so I must acknowledge it. But I think going back to the actual in ring stuff, yeah, I really want to see Drew and Bobby get a nice build up to WrestleMania and have that match happen. But if we're gonna have Brock involved in there, that'd be cool too. Even though I think the only thing with Brock is obviously Paul Heyman is his advocate, and he's in the program with Roman Reigns. So, well, maybe Paul can have different people in his clientele. So I'm just interested to see what happens there in that regard. And yes, I have read or saw the rumors of NXT moving to Tuesday nights. We're going to do another show in a few days because we're going to preview AEW's pay-per-view that's coming up this upcoming weekend, the Revolution event. So I think during that show, I'll give a breakdown of a potential NXT moving to Tuesday. But I will say this: if it is true, it's a very good move for all parties involved. It's frustrating when you're watching on Wednesday nights AEW and then NXT having to flip back and forth. And I know we're in a modern age where people have, I'm about to say TiVo. I'm aging myself, but you have on demand, or video recording. You can watch one, record the other, go back and forth. But I think a lot of people like me like to watch things live when it's happening. And I'm flipping back and forth. I will say I do tend to watch more of the AEW, the NXT, but I do see what's going on in each promotion. And I think that hurts the ratings and it hurts the viewership and the ability to comprehend what's going on for wrestling fans. So if you have Monday Night Raw, Tuesday NXT, Wednesday AEW, Friday SmackDown. As far as, and yes, I know AEW Dark is on Tuesdays. People say, "Oh, NXT is going to mess it to that." Look, Dark. I know they're thinking about bringing on to TNT or TBS and all that stuff. Look, that's for AEW to figure out. But as far as broadcast television, having those two shows, NXT and AEW, on different nights is a very good thing if it does pan out. But these are all rumors and it may not come to fruition. But I wanted to acknowledge that since we were on a WWE trip discussing Elimination Chamber. All right, let's move on to New Japan and what's going on there. I was able to watch the Castle Attack events that took place over the past 2 days, and here are my thoughts. I thought Ibushi and Naito for the Intercontinental Championship was a solid match and was very good. Okay, that's the Houston Rockets are planning to retire James Harden jersey number, even though he bailed on them. Anyway, silliness. All right, I mean that's why it's very hard to watch the television, at least as far as like watch a Sports Center or your sporting event while you're recording a show, because you make silly statements like that or see silly stuff like that. But anyway, Ibushi and Naito for the Intercontinental title. I've been on record for saying I do not like the merger of the championships. I think it's very important for a wrestling promotion. You have your world championship, but you also have a good secondary title for the mid card to fight for and to give them motivation to not only hold a title, but maybe to be a stepping stone to the ultimate world championship. With Ibushi winning the match, they're now merging the titles. And as I said, I don't like that move at all. It is interesting though that Naito was the one 2 Wrestle Kingdoms ago that was so motivated to merge the titles, and ultimately he was able to do or hold the IC title and the world title together, and he was able to do that. And then he was the one that now wanted to separate the championships. But I said the match itself, I thought was pretty standard stuff going on. You had Ibushi kick out of Destino, which was Naito's finishing move. It's New Japan. People kick out of finishing moves, but I didn't like that at all. You know, when he kicked out of it and he tried to get it again, and Ibushi was ultimately able to get the win. So now they've merged the title. We're going to see a new belt. He's going to face El Desperado, who was able to win the junior heavyweight championship at the anniversary show coming up in a few days. So I guess when Ibushi wins that, and it's actually a title match, but Ibushi's not going to lose to El Desperado. They're going to present a new championship ahead. I don't know when they're going to have the new belt. They may wait till the finish of the New Japan Cup to have it, but they're going to have that. If you're going to do that, you really got to elevate that never open weight title. And I think they're trying to do that with Tanahashi having the championship right now. And I think they want to have the U.S. championship have a bigger presence. The only problem is currently, as we're speaking, and luckily, Lord willing, and this ties into real world stuff, we're getting the vaccines going on with the COVID and everything going on there. You're starting to see a little bit. I saw the New Japan card. You're starting to see some Americans or non-Japanese wrestlers going to be in the competition. So you're starting to see a little bit more travel. John Moxley currently has that U.S. championship. He is with AEW and currently in the United States. I think once they're able to have more travel and allow that option, you got to get that U.S. championship in Japan and have guys competing for that. So I think that's where you really want to see things going. But this ultimately puts more impetus on those never open championships. And I mentioned the individual one with Tanahashi. We've seen Great Khan fight for it. I think you're going to see some other guys like Ishii and Jay White. They're going to want to throw their hands in there or make themselves a factor. You're going to also see that never open weight 3-man championship. Which is currently with Ishii, Yoshihashi, and Goto. You're starting to see like we saw the Bullet Club combination of Jay White and the Gorillas of Destiny fight for that title. So I guess what they figure is that we're going to merge the IC title and the World Championship, make it a World Heavyweight title, have one guy go for that, and we're going to put more weight on these never open titles. So I think that's a fair compromise. And then half the guys are light heavyweights anyway, and there's a light heavyweight tag title and a light heavyweight individual title. So I think that may be enough belts ultimately to have it. But it's disappointing to see the Intercontinental title go. We've seen, and I know that people look at Shinsuke Nakamura, they had that title for him to kind of keep himself occupied when he wasn't going for the world championship. But that title's been held by a lot of great guys. Naito, Jay White, Devitt. We've seen so many guys with that light heavy, with the Intercontinental title. Chris Jericho. You go down the list of all the guys that have held that Tanahashi, that have held that championship. Even Evil, technically he was an IC championship winner when he had the double titles. So that's a legendary group of guys who've had that title. I like the look of it. The white belt is cool. I hope they keep some that white leather element with the New World title, maybe a black and white deal. So yeah, it's just disappointing to see that title go and be retired if the plans are going to be held like I think they're going to be. But yeah, just interesting that they're going to actually merge that championship. We have got some bad news with Hiromu Takahashi. He's out 6 months with a shoulder injury, I guess a torn pec. And what that means for the light heavyweight division is that we had the three-way championship. Well, first of all, at Hasseltag, El Phantasmo and Ishimori lost the tag titles to El Desperado and Kanemaru. So now we have, I thought that was a very solid match. That opened up Ishimori and El Phantasmo, I think, to go for that individual title. And sure enough, after the announcement of Takahashi's injury, we had that three-way match between El Desperado, Phantasmo, and Bushi. And El Desperado emerged with the championship. Once again, a solid match. Very weird with Desperado. They towards the ramp or towards the entrance in the middle of the match, you saw El Phantasmo rip off Desperado's mask and beat him up pretty good. So we had a singles match between Phantasmo and Bushi for a good 5-10 minutes. And I thought ultimately that's where they were going to go. But Desperado came back with a second mask and was able to emerge with the victory. So El Desperado, out of all people, he's a double champion because remember he has he has the tag title for the light heavyweights with Kanemaru, and as he said, he has the individual title as well. Desperado is a guy who is really he's been kind of that bridesmaid to get that individual light heavy title, and he finally was able to do it. I thought Phantasma, who's been increasing his charisma and his presence, would be the guy that would ultimately win the championship. But it's kind of good in a way that he's chasing the championships now because he's a good heel. He's very annoying, and I think it's very good that you have that type of guy going for the championship. And I think it's open season for that light heavy. Now it's going to be suspended a little bit because we have the New Japan Cup where it's more open season for guys. So it's all weight classes are competing for that chance at the heavyweight title. So we're not going to really see too many defenses from Desperado, and he has the tag titles. You might see some of those defended. But yeah, but I think that uh, that grouping, Phantasmo, Ishimori, Desperado, Kanemaru, Bushi, you want to throw Wado in there. I think that's a very interesting group of 4 to 5 wrestlers that could be in contention for the light heavyweight championship. So we'll see what happens there. The singles matches that were intriguing, Jay White was able to ultimately beat Ishii. A tremendous hard-hitting matchup. And White, who had his little sabbatical earlier on in the year, is back in full force. I can definitely see him being a major contender for the New Japan Cup. I can see Okada winning that New Japan Cup as well. He was able to defeat Evil at Castle Attack. Those two guys, especially the Okada side of his perspective, he can call a shot pretty much any time for a world championship. Some would argue he's the greatest champion of all time. He's in a short list. I'll give you that. That's another debate for another day. But Okada getting past Evil, kind of putting that feud to bed. He puts himself in a front row seat or a very good chance to win the New Japan Cup. Jay White's right there. I think Naito would be of intrigue as well. So I think you saw kind of the separate Ishii and Evil, good performers. I think those guys will be in that never open weight vicinity to win those championships. So I think you just saw a little bit of separation from world championship contenders and never open weight contenders, with Jay White and Okada being able to win those matches. Guerrillas of Destiny were able to retain their tag titles meaning Goto and Yoshihashi. No reasons for God to lose his championship at this stage of the game. They've been very solid performers. I say keep the belts on them. And as I said, we're in this New Japan Cup era, and I need to see what the bracket is. I said there's no reason for them to put those belts on Goto and Yoshihashi at this time. Tanahashi defeated Great Okan to retain the Never Openweight title. As I said, having Tanahashi with that belt, when I talk about greatest of all time with Okada, Tanahashi is in that conversation as well. I think it's good that he is a champion and holding that belt and can hold off contenders. I think Ospreay, Jeff Cobb, that whole group of the Empire are going to be major contenders for that title. But as I said, this kind of on hold until we see what happens with the New Japan Cup, which takes place over the next 2 weeks or so. But yeah, as I said, I think New Japan is in. They're trying to work their way through things, and they just got to figure out what to do with the heavyweight championship and the IC Intercontinental title, and get that resolved. And once you do that, I think you'll see an elevation of those never open weight titles to be something that guys can pursue in the time being. And we're going to wrap up with some AEW thoughts and what's going on there. Yeah, Paul Wight, aka The Big Show, is now a member of AEW. Look, he was with WWE for 20 years. Remember his debut, I think, was in 1999. So we'll do the quick math, 20 plus years with one organization. He had a excellent run there. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's won world championships there. Had a very big run. But we also remember him back in the day with WCW as the Giant. And those are fun times as well. But I think for him, it's a good move. I don't need to see him wrestling every week. We're starting to see some of these guys, and we've seen Sting. He's going to be in that street fight teaming up with Darby Allin against Taz's crew. So we're starting with I think it's ultimately going to be Ricky Starks against him, Starks and Brian Cage. So we're starting to see some of the older guys find their way into AEW. I think Paul is a good. It'd be good at many levels. He can still maybe wrestle once or twice a year, especially if they have some over the top competitions, battle royals, whatever you want to call it. So I think he's always a big presence. He can do that. They say he's going to do some commentary. I'm interested to see what happens there with that. I've heard him talk, and he has that show on Netflix, The Big Show. It's a kid's show, but it's wrestling, so I checked it out. It's not awful. It's definitely for teenagers and for little kids, but he has personality on there. You hear him talk. So he's got person. So that's good. Yeah, I could see him definitely doing some commentary or some analysis along those lines. Just being there though, maybe to help guide some of the wrestlers, especially the bigger guys. He could be for the Willie Hobbs and the Archers and people like that really need to know how to wrestle as big men, even with eh, things along those lines. He's a veteran. He brings experience, so I think that's very good for him to be in the organization. And I can't really comment more on it because I have to see what capacity he's going to be used in. But yeah, he's a guy who still believes he has some tread on his tires to fight and can be a contributor in different ways. Because if he goes to WWE, you'll see him maybe every other Royal Rumble. You'll see him do some silly skits and some stuff like that. He's not going to make it. I'm sure he's making more money, in doing this in AEW. So I think overall it's a good move for him. And that concludes today's show. Thanks for listening to our broadcast. As always, follow us at thesportsinquirer.net and also our social media platforms and your podcast providers. Just do a search of Sports Inquirer and you will see everything that we have going on. Until next time, good fight, good night, be safe.